LeBron! Yeah, I saw a duck last night. It was nice. But we might need to talk about whether or not that was one of his better ones. I dare say I think a lot of people are overreacting. Plus, KD has some things to say. Kyrie's a topic of discussion. And the Indianapolis Colts are trying to make some noise. Did you like that, Swagger? You like that?
I like that. Get a little football in.
Yeah, you know what? You know what I like? I like the fact that you know what, you look like you got a little head compared to your body, which I know I have, and you rocking the ball look, which means, who knows? One day, I might try it. I might need to.
It's what you need to do. It's actually what you need to do.
I might need to do.
Yeah.
It's time for first take.
I don't know what's happening right now. But I do know this. Matty Ice is an Indianapolis Colt. The Falcons trade Matt Ryan to the Colts. Meanwhile, Atlanta reaches a deal with Marcus Mariota. The Falcons got a 2022 third-round pick for Ryan. It will leave a dead money charge of over $40 million this season on the club's salary cap, the largest charge for any player all time. Ryan had a strong run in his first 10 seasons in Atlanta, including an MVP and Super Bowl appearance in 2016. The last four, however, he has not had the same success, and he is yet to return to the postseason. Hello, Marcus Spears. Hi, Stephen A. JJ Redick will be here in a bit to talk a little NBA. I'm going to start with you, Marcus. Does Matt Ryan make the Colts a Super Bowl threat?
The Colts don't have a left tackle. They still need help at wide receiver, and I'm not sure. We've seen Matt Ryan on bad teams. The ante is about to be upped, and I'm excited for him. I think he's a better option than they've had. And Phillip Rivers was solid, and he got to the divisional round in the playoffs. I get that every team that starts the season off is thinking about Super Bowls. And the Colts won't be one of those teams where it's a figment of people's imagination. But right now, with some of the holes on this roster, no. And I haven't seen Matt Ryan play for anything realistic in a minute. Like, we've watched the Atlanta Falcons, and we've seen Matt Ryan put up gaudy numbers. And it's almost similar to what we've seen from Matt Stafford when he was in Detroit for the last few years with Matt Ryan in Atlanta. A team really playing for nothing. The quarterback being the highlight. Now these crunch time situations, these high leverage pressure moments are going to come along with what the Indianapolis Colts already are. And then I want to see Matt Ryan operate and thrive. This is not me saying Matt Ryan is not a good quarterback. This is not me saying that he's not an upgrade over what they've had the past 2 years. He's even an upgrade over Phillip Rivers, I believe. But ultimately, when we start talking about Super Bowl, I think everybody needs to pay attention to what's happening in the AFC with all of these young quarterbacks, with all of these teams that's already been on the cusp of getting there. And I just can't put Matt Ryan and the Colts there just because of this move yet.
I certainly can, Marcus, and I'm going to tell you why. I think that when we think about it from this perspective, when we looked at Lamar Jackson in Baltimore, we saw a whole bunch of holes around him offensively. We said, when the hell are the Baltimore Ravens going to get some additional talent around him? I know that Bateman and Hollywood and all of those boys, they could ball, but in the same breath, we still looked at Baltimore as having huge question marks. But nevertheless, they were elevated in the mind's eye in terms of being a Super Bowl contender because of Lamar Jackson. Now, obviously, Matt Ryan is a different kind of player, and I get that. But guess what Matt Ryan has? Matt Ryan has arguably the best running back in football, in Jonathan Taylor, who just finished rushing for over 1,800 yards, okay? He's got a massive offensive line that's considered one of the best in football. When you take into account that you got an offensive line that's going to protect you, which he didn't have in Atlanta. You got an elite running game, which he didn't have in Atlanta. You know Frank Reich knows how to call some plays. We don't know that about Arthur Smith and all of that other stuff at this particular juncture, even though he's the former offensive coordinator in Tennessee before he became the head coach in Atlanta. I think you have to look at those situations and then take into account Matt Ryan's experience. What we really did was hold against him the fact that you had a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl against Tom Brady in 2016, in the 2016 season. And what happened? You allowed them to come back. You didn't stop the bleeding at all, which you had the prowess to do at that particular moment in time. The next year you come to the playoffs, you get bounced out in the divisional playoff round, and after that you've missed the playoffs for the last 4 years, didn't even have a winning record. So we hold against them a lot of the stuff that was transpiring in Atlanta. There's no question that he had something to do with it. But it's the same guy that's passed for nearly 60,000 yards, that has a 2-touchdown to interception, got a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, okay? We're looking at it from that perspective, the experience, the fact that he can make any NFL throw. All of those things come into consideration. I'm looking at the system he's walking into. I'm looking at the personnel he has surrounding him. I'm looking at the coach that he has working with him, okay? And I'm saying, excuse me, yes, you got to look at what's transpiring in the AFC West. You got to look at Cincinnati and those boys in the AFC North. You can't ignore the Buffalo Bills. But
Tennessee.
the AFC South with Tennessee, Indy's going to have something to say about that division. And if they have something to say about the division, they're going to have something to say about the postseason picture. I like this move for them. I think it's a big-time move for them based on the personnel they have surrounding him, and that's where I'm at with it.
I like the move. I like the move, but I can tell you in basketball season, you in basketball mode.
Why is
because
that?
I know we want to put all the blame on Carson Wentz, but did you see the Colts go up there and lose to Jacksonville?
Yeah,
to get in the playoffs?
26-11, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot that this team has to do, Stephen A. I get it. Everybody's excited and on the Matt Ryan train, including me. But ultimately, this team has some other things that they need to address as well. Like left tackle.
Okay, listen, I know the big man balling. I know where you going. I know where you going, big man balling. And when we watch it, we watch it. It's can't miss television. Big man balling. I got it. So you're going to bring up the big boys and you got to point out how, listen, let's not ignore that. I got all of that. Let me ask you this question. Weren't you raving about who was Swagoo's pick to win the AFC West?
The AFC West? I don't remember.
That would be the Chargers. Right? That's what he said.
Yeah.
Did the Chargers make the playoffs this past season?
Nope.
No, they did not.
Nope.
Don't stop you from picking them. Don't stop you from pointing out that this is a team to be reckoned with. Why? Because that brother Justin Herbert can ball. I get all of that. But they didn't make the playoffs. What I'm saying is Indy didn't make the playoffs either. But with Jonathan Taylor, with their offensive line, with their coach, and with a quarterback that isn't a mistake waiting to happen like Carson Wentz, I'm sorry. All I'm saying is when we talk about the AFC, we got to talk about the Indianapolis Colts too. I don't think we can ignore it.
They in there for a playoff picture, but the question is, are they a damn Super Bowl threat?
Ain't that
Do you think the Indy Colts are a Super Bowl threat?
Yes. I'm saying that. Listen, tell me. Let me ask you a question. Were the Cincinnati Bengals considered a Super Bowl threat?
Not at all.
Exactly.
Not at all. But we didn't have this question in March on the 22nd.
But what I'm saying is there's no dynasty in the AFC. There's no dynasty. We've seen vulnerabilities in Kansas City. We clearly have seen some vulnerabilities in Buffalo.
How many teams do you have to go through before you get to the Colts being one of the best teams in the AFC?
Okay, well, let me be specific. I believe that the Indianapolis Colts have a legitimate shot because Ryan Tannehill's the quarterback in Tennessee. Let's not forget that. I believe the Indianapolis Colts have a legitimate shot to win the division. If they win the division, we talking two playoff games. And with Jonathan Taylor and offensive line and the quarterback, I think you got to count Indy in the picture.
Marcus, let me ask you this. I want to transition here because both Matt Ryan and Russell Wilson have now made the jump from the NFC to the AFC. Which of those quarterbacks is in the better spot?
Matt Ryan in the better spot because the least amount of competition. Like we're not comparing quarterbacks. We're talking about the path that's easier to travel in order to get to the playoffs.
That's right.
I think Russ will be in the playoffs. And if the Denver Broncos played the Indianapolis Colts with Russell Wilson at quarterback, I'd take the Denver Broncos. But the path of least resistance is the one that Matt Ryan resides in, and that's the only reason I would give him the edge. We are going to have 1,000 conversations, Molly Q and Stephen A, about the AFC West. And we're going to see this thing go up and down, and they're going to juggle throughout the rest of the season.
But they all can't make it.
You would take all four of those teams before you took the Indianapolis Colts, and you would be more comfortable with it.
Stop it. No, you can't do that because they're going to beat up on each other, and all of them ain't going to make it. That's the whole point. The point is that, like you just highlighted, the road to prosperity for the Indianapolis Colts is considerably easier because they're in the AFC South, right? The AFC West will be up on one another. I'm just saying, they're going to be right in the mix.
They're going to have to see somebody. They gonna have to see somebody.
And somebody
if
gonna
they
have to
play
see
Buffalo
them.
in the playoffs, who you gonna take?
Excuse me? I'm taking Buffalo over
If they
everybody
playing
right
Buffalo
now.
in the playoffs,
I'm
who
taking
you gonna
Buffalo over
take?
everybody right now. Everybody right now.
If they playing Kansas City, who you gonna take?
I don't know about that yet. I got to see Kansas City defense. I got to see that. I got to see it. You know I'm right. I got to see that. Come on now.
What is
I got to
it?
see
What
that.
is it? Is it
You
fluid?
gonna take Kansas City?
It's fluid.
It's fluid, Marcus. It's fluid.
It absolutely is fluid. You know, I got to see that, bro. Come
I
on
knew
now.
where we would get to, Molly. I knew where we would get to. Listen, asking this
All around the
question in
mulberry bush.
March 22nd, sure, they Super Bowl contenders. But you know damn well when we get closer to this season, based on if they don't make the moves that are needed to be made, and as we sit today, those moves have not been made. Stephen A.
Yeah.
The Colts need a receiver. They need a high-powered, prolific receiver. You know who else? You know what teams in the AFC don't need them? All the teams we just mentioned. They need a left tackle. A left tackle.
I know a few teams that need an offensive line. I know a few teams that need a running game. I can't ignore that. Come on, man.
Right.
Listen, we'll get back to it later.
You know what else they need?
We'll get back to
Marcus,
it later.
you'll be back. The other thing they need is consistency at quarterback.
He's going to just sit back and recline.
Hold on, let me just say one thing.
Huffing and puffing like I'm not making a point. He know they don't have no running game.
You made a point. Let's just try to shoot it down. All right, gentlemen. Marcus, we're saying bye to you. I just want to say this quickly. For the seventh straight season, the Colts are starting a different quarterback week 1.
That's true.
We'll keep it rolling. Quick takes, Stephen A. This is all you. According to Adam Schefter, Leonard Fournette, who spent Monday visiting with the New England Patriots, is re-signing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on a 3-year deal. Talk to me.
I like Leonard Fournette. You know why? Because even though there have been times in the past that you question his durability, you know one thing you don't question? Whether or not he's going to show up when it really, really counts. Come playoff time, come big games, Leonard Fournette shows up. And that's what I appreciate about him. He's a rough rider. And I think that's exactly what Tom Brady needs. And Leonard Fournette doesn't sign back for a 3-year deal if Tom Brady ain't there. They know what this is about.
Absolutely. And he was a difference maker in that Super Bowl run. Okay, JJ Redick just tapped in. Let's get to the association. The Lakers 31-41 are fighting for a play-in spot, but LeBron's not stressed. He was focused on his homecoming to Believe land. LeBron knew the task at hand, scoring 38 in a win over the Cavs. Keep in mind, over the weekend, he passed Karl Malone for second on the all-time scoring list. What a time to be alive.
I can care less about what the narrative about our team is. I've been, at my point in my career, I don't get involved in that stuff. I don't read about it. I don't hear it too much. It's like really, I go home, drink wine or drink tequila every night. And if I'm at my house in LA, I'm watching a movie with the kids or I'm playing Madden. None of that stuff matters to me. I'm having a blast playing a game of basketball. You know, and like I told the other night, I said, yes, I get frustrated and, angry from losses and things we could have done better and things of that nature. But, I mean, once I leave the arena and I get home, I'll leave it there. I kind of I'll leave it there and let's move on to the next day. How can we get better? So I'm literally having the time of my life right now.
The time of my life. After the win, Magic Johnson feeling optimistic, tweeting this: if the Lakers play with this type of effort, speed, and quickness in defense and offense, I think we could have a good playoff run, especially with Anthony Davis coming back. But JJ Redick, hello, sir. Good to see you.
Great to see y'all.
What do you think? Do you believe that LeBron is having the time of his life right now?
I think this is a great example of someone having perspective and someone having gratitude. To be able to be playing basketball and playing basketball at such a high level in his 19th season, to have the perspective of all the things that he's built off the court, on the court, and in a very frustrating season in which the Lakers have underperformed relative to expectations, he has found a purpose and a joy in this season. And yes, in a way, the purpose is probably very much individually oriented in the sense that he's going for the scoring title. He's passed Karl Malone. He's got a chance in the next year or so to pass Kareem as the all-time scorer. But this is to me LeBron grown up. This is an example of his maturity, the gratitude he has for being able to play this game, the game that he loves so much. I will say, though, I get where people would take umbrage with this quote. Mm-hmm. Kobe would never. MJ would never. But LeBron has never done things like them. LeBron has always done things his way. I appreciate this perspective from him.
I was prepared to disagree with you because I didn't see the quote in its entirety.
Yes.
When you hear, I'm having the time of my life, that definitely was going to get me riled up because he should not be feeling that way. But when you watch what he said, I'm glad that we got context. I don't disagree with you, but I do think the totality of his quote requires a more macro conversation. LeBron James can say what he said because LeBron James doesn't cheat the game of basketball. LeBron James shows up most nights. He balls out. At age 37 in his 19th season, the brother's averaging 38-6. 38-6. At age 37, his 19th season in the league. There is no doubt that there is no player in the history of basketball that has been this good for this long. But the fact that he shows up 99.9% of the time, he does his post-game interviews. He's a guy that embraces all the responsibilities that come with being an ambassador of the game of basketball. See, these are the moments right here where folks like myself and others have a requirement, in my opinion, to step back and appreciate what this man means to the game of basketball. Because he upholds it, not just with his performance, but with the professionalism, the integrity, and all the other elements that are supposed to come with it. But when you say something like that, we need to highlight the fact that, LeBron, you can. Nobody else better not say that. Because there's not enough people doing what he does. And I'm not talking about statistics. I'm talking about the game itself. You see, you don't play for free. And you don't play, regardless of COVID, in the privacy of your own home, in empty arenas or whatever. There are people that work hard every day and pay their hard-earned money and walk through the turnstiles. They come there to see you perform because you voluntarily said, this is a job that I want, and I want the money that comes with it. And in return for that, I'm going to go out on this court and I'm going to do this. And on far too many occasions, we don't see people embracing that responsibility. And because of that, as much as the game is flourishing, there's going to be a problem when a collective bargaining negotiation comes forward. There's going to be a problem in the mind's eye of the game as it pertains to how people look at these athletes and look at the game itself, because too many times we're seeing people not place the value on excellence that man has repeatedly placed on this. So when he says, I just go home, drink my wine, or drink some tequila, or whatever the case may be, he can do that. It's just that people need to understand why he can do that, because he puts in that work, and he makes those sacrifices, and he delivers. And so when he says that, I think the position that must be taken is, don't y'all try it, because y'all ain't him. And we ain't talking about numbers. We ain't talking about stats. We're talking about LeBron could have scored 20 last night. We still look at him and go like this, damn, the effort is there, the commitment is there, et cetera, et cetera. You can't, no, the normal dude can't be 10 games under 500, have all the drama that's come associated with the Lakers this season, the dysfunctionality that has raked through this franchise, the embarrassment, got Magic Johnson half the time calling him out, along with James Worthy. James Worthy looked like he needs to take some Prozac after every damn Lakers game, for crying out loud, in studio after every loss, because he can't believe how bad they've looked and how dysfunctional they've looked. When something like that is happening, you can't be talking about, I'm good, I'm happy, unless you're LeBron James and you do what he does for the most part on a night in, night out basis. That's what I think needs to be said.
I'm glad that you made those points, and I'm glad that you're not up here killing LeBron for saying that and understanding the quote in its totality.
Yes, right.
I actually think this season is a credit to LeBron because he has built an incredible standard, personal standard, and he has reached that. Obviously, the Lakers have failed to this point in the season, but he has reached his individual standard. He has upheld that throughout this season.
Well, I would say that. I don't disagree with that. I would tell you he has fulfilled his obligations. He's lived up to, if not elevated, his personal standard as a player. As a de facto GM, that's a different matter entirely. He doesn't get to get a pass from this roster that was assembled. It's got his fingerprints written all over it now, JJ. You can't let him off the hook for that, number one. And number two, back to the positive, it's important. He hasn't just uplifted his personal standard. He's allowed us the license to mandate what the standard should be for everybody. It's not to produce the numbers, Molly, JJ. It's to maximize your potential and put on display that you are doing everything you can to maximize your potential, as opposed to taking games off, as opposed to not putting in the work, putting in the time. I've seen guys, and you know I'm telling the truth with this. There are guys whose game now is the same as it was 4 years ago. How is that possible? You making enough money where you can invest the time in the gym to perfect your craft and not be the same person that you were 4 or 5 years ago. There are players nameless, because I'm not going there. There are nameless players out there, will remain nameless. Their game hasn't changed, hasn't evolved, hasn't improved. The complacency is clearly obvious. I'm getting paid. I'm good. Let me work out and be in condition, but not work on my game. He doesn't do that.
This is why LeBron is LeBron.
Yeah.
This is why LeBron is LeBron. And that's what I was speaking to when I talked about that individual standard.
Right.
And I love the fact that in a lost season, for the most part, he can find joy, whether it's on the court or off the court. He even mentioned, he talked about the frustrations, what he could do better, what the team could do better. He's acknowledging all of that. But the fact that he can find a joy and a purpose in this season is a credit to him.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to
He's
refute
staying
that.
in the moment.
Yes.
Regardless of where he is. LeBron, though, guys, how about the dunk? Put his former teammate, Kevin Love, on a poster last night. What'd you think, Stephen A? One of his better dunks?
It was all right. It was all right. It was all right. Listen, Kevin Love, God bless him. First of all, he'd never try to jump with LeBron. That ain't his game. Secondly, and more importantly, remember Kevin Love is a guy, I mean, that he tried to flop there and get an offensive foul. Should have moved out the way. I love how LeBron messed with him a little bit. I love how, they love each other. Kevin Love is hard not to love. He's one of the best people you'll ever meet. He really, really is a really great guy. But I got to tell you, JJ, we don't have the footage right now. It didn't compare to LeBron's dunk on Nurkic years ago when he was a cat. Remember that dunk? Remember that dunk? It didn't compare to LeBron jumping over John Lucas from the right baseline when he was in Miami on a Sunday afternoon. It didn't compare. I mean, there's a few dunks that LeBron has registered in his career. I don't even have this as top 5 for LeBron.
Have Kevin stayed in position?
Yeah.
And really tried to take a charge?
Or really tried to jump.
Yes, exactly. Then it's different.
It would have been different.
There was a last-second business decision on Kevin Love's part.
Correct.
He bailed out of the charge block. He bailed out of it.
Correct. But I mean, the people need to go back. Watch LeBron's. First of all, LeBron's had some open court dunks. LeBron had, and the two that I mentioned, that dunk on Portland from years ago when he was with Cleveland, Lord have mercy. Now, go back to that one.
Yeah.
Go back to that one.
He's having an impressive season, leading the scoring title race as well.
Yeah.
How about the Nets, though, guys? A lot of question marks there. So already without Kyrie Irving and Ben Simmons, the Brooklyn Nets were down another starter to illness, lost one to injury. Now, they still had Kevin Durant, and that was enough against Utah. Durant had 37 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists, and the Nets beat the Jazz 114-106 on Monday night for their 6th win in 7 games. The Nets have just 10 games remaining in their season and sit a game ahead of Charlotte for the 8th seed. 4 of those will be on the road, with 1 against the Knicks, meaning Kyrie Irving can only play 3 games down the stretch. Now, if Brooklyn falls to 9, that means they'll need to win twice to get into the playoffs. JJ, are the Nets in danger of falling out of the 8th spot?
It's an oddly worded question, but yes, they are in danger of falling out of the 8th spot. No. I'm not saying. We know who writes the questions, Molly. We know who writes the questions. Here's why. As you mentioned, Kyrie, he's only available 3 of the last 10 games.
Yeah.
Last night was a huge win for them. If you look at this week, they started off with Utah last night. They're at Memphis tomorrow. They're at Miami Heat, and then they come back Sunday at home against the Charlotte Hornets, who, as we know, are a game back with them. So this was a huge win for them. The reason I say they're in danger, their margin for error on a night-to-night basis is very slim. Seth Curry is still battling this ankle issue that's been bothering him all year. Ben Simmons, herniated disc. We don't know when he's available. Kevin Durant, obviously one of one. What happens if he has an off shooting night? what happens if he has 2 off shooting nights? Right? So much is required of Kevin Durant.
Yeah, it's all on his shoulders.
Right.
No, to be A plus every single night for this team to win right now. Do I think they're going to drop from the 8th? Probably not. I don't think they're going to catch Toronto, but there's a good chance this week, as I mentioned, will determine, I think, whether or not. The one thing that's good for them in their corner right now, 3 of their last 4 games are against teams that aren't playing for anything. The only game in that stretch is a game against Cleveland, who obviously is still battling for their playoff positioning, but 3 of their last 4 are against teams that are trying at this point to lose.
But to your point, it's only a big one right now.
Well, first of all, let's be very, very clear. Big one is enough for the 8th seed. He's Kevin Durant. You know who he is. You know who he is, okay? It's KD, okay? There are no off nights, all right? Just stop it. There's no off nights. Off nights compared to KD standard. But off nights overall, there are no off nights for KD. His brother is something special. There's nothing to talk about that. I don't even want to think about that because that's just a waste of time. That's number one. Number 2, Memphis. Memphis, are you ready? NBA Countdown is coming to Memphis, Tennessee tomorrow night. Ja Morant and the crew have called. We will be there in full effect in the house. Ja Morant, Bane, Jaren Jackson, the whole crew. We there. I'm coming to Memphis, Tennessee. Okay. And damn it, I ain't Elvis. That's number 2. Number 3, I'm looking at the schedule, JJ. Yeah, you got Memphis. Kyrie's going to be on the court. Looking forward to that. With KD. At Miami. I really wish I could get from Memphis to Miami. That would really, really be nice. But I'm too busy. I can't make it. But it would have been nice to be there. But, okay, after that, Charlotte, Detroit, all right, Milwaukee. They'll win 2 of those 3. They got Houston, all right. They got Cleveland and Indiana to end the season. Not much is going to be on the line. The Nets are going to the playoffs. Let's be very, very clear about that. They're going to the playoffs. They're not falling out of the 8th-seeded spot. All right, it's going to be interesting because, again, if the players would begin today, they'd play Toronto. Kyrie can't play in Toronto. I think Toronto could beat a Brooklyn Nets team without Kyrie. I do believe that to happen. But I am not concerned, and I'm watching KD. Listen, if the man hadn't gotten hurt, the man would probably be in the league for league MVP. They were the number 1 seed without Kyrie, with James Harden iffy and all of that stuff. They were the number 1 seed in the East when he went down. He came back. They were the number 8 seed, okay? Kevin Durant would be the leading the votes for league MVP this year if he had not gotten hurt. Just like Draymond, because I know and the defensive player means a lot to him. He would have been my defensive player of the year had he not gotten hurt and missed 32 games, even though I love what Bridges is doing in Phoenix. I am not worried about the Brooklyn Nets getting to the postseason. I'm worried about the availability of Kyrie once they get there. Okay.
It is interesting that you brought up this MVP thing because we've been doing this all season and talking about this race, and it felt very much. It felt very much the first couple months. It was Steph Curry and Kevin Durant.
That's right.
Yeah.
Steph had a shooting slump. Draymond gets hurt.
Yep.
They start losing some games. Mm-hmm. Kevin gets hurt. Now it seems like it's a 3-person race at this point.
Yep.
Here's a question.
Who's your 3, by the way? Because I haven't heard you on this.
Jokic, Joel, and Giannis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But here's an interesting
in that order,
scenario.
By the way? In that order?
If they. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
1A, 1B.
Okay.
Like I think this is something that's going to come down to the last week. We're
identical with that. Yeah.
But if Brooklyn does end up in the 8th seed and Kyrie can't play in Toronto for that game, they're home for that 8, 9, 10, whoever wins the 9-10 game. There's a chance that Kyrie's unavailable for the entire play-in tournament.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
However, I agree with you. I do think Kevin Durant and 4 players, you can pick them off the street. It doesn't really matter. He's good enough to get this team into the playoffs.
That's right.
Yeah.
See, JJ's learning. JJ's learning.
Okay, relax. Vegas still has Brooklyn winning the title, by the way, which is shocking to me.
Okay, go ahead.
And then they have Phoenix Suns after. I'm glad, yeah.
That's right.
Professor. Yeah, JJ needs to learn some basketball from you.
No.
Still to come on First Take, no Embiid, no Harden, no problem for the Sixers last night, but is The East looking like a beast right now in the association. Tyrese Maxey told Joel Embiid he'd step up in his absence. He sure did. Scored 13 of his game-high 28 points in the fourth, including 9 in a row in a crucial stretch. And without Embiid and James Harden, beat the Eastern Conference leading Miami Heat 113-106 last night. The win pulled Philly within 2.5 games of the Heat in the conference. Embiid sat out with back soreness, Harden with left hamstring tightness. Meanwhile, the Celtics tandem of Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, too much for OKC to handle. The duo combined for 34 points in the first half as Oklahoma City's losing streak has reached double digits after a 132-123 loss to Boston despite a fourth quarter push led by Trey Mann. Watch out for Boston quietly climbing the standings, currently fourth in the East. On that note, we welcome in my girl, Monica McNutt. Good morning. Good morning. Good to have you with us.
What's happening, y'all?
We will get to you in just a second. I'm going to start with JJ here. JJ, are the Celtics the team to beat now in the East?
I don't think they are. I've been saying this for the last few weeks. Miami is, to me, the most dangerous team in the East. Last night's loss was a little concerning, obviously losing to Philly without Joel and without James Harden. But I think we've all overlooked the Bucks. They're 32-9 when the big three play. Mm-hmm. They just got Brook Lopez back. They're the defending champs. To me, those two teams are probably the two best teams in the East.
Miami and Milwaukee?
Miami and Milwaukee. Okay. Celtics are great. Best defensive team in the league. They've been on a tear. They're 27-7 since January 6th. Right. They're great. My concern with them in a playoff series is the nature of their offense. It's not their defense. They're so disruptive. They switch 1 through 5. They take you out of what you're trying to run. But the real issue to me is half-court offense. The nature of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum creating tough shots and them really not having a high-volume knockdown shooter. They've got 2 guys shooting over league average, Peyton Pritchard and Grant Williams, but those aren't high-volume guys. And as I know from my own career, getting spot-up playoff threes is a very different thing than regular season spot-up threes.
I feel where you're coming from, but I'm going to respectfully disagree.
All right.
And I'm going to tell you that I know you're trying to be slick because, see, when people are debating, Molly, I don't know why you haven't figured this out yet. So when they're going up against me,
teach me,
when
please.
they're going up against me, yeah, I am.
I don't
teaching
watch enough debates over the last 6 years.
No, you just
10 hours a week.
You just choose to ignore me when you want, and I'm just not letting you get away with that today.
Go ahead.
What I'm trying to say is that JJ tried to pull the okey doke. So what happens is he wants to make the argument for Milwaukee and Miami.
Yeah.
Knowing I'm going to make my argument about Boston. But he talked about Boston. It's not going to work because you didn't do it with enough passion and enough validity as far as I'm concerned. The Boston Celtics could potentially win this conference. I'm telling you this right now.
But I agree with you on that, but are they the team to beat?
Right now, I think they are. Right now. That could change because it's fluid.
Wasn't a lot of confidence in that argument.
Let me explain. Because it's the season, and you got to wait. It's 82 games. I'm being very serious here. Over the last 22 games, they've had a 9-game winning streak, a 5-game winning streak, and now a 4-game winning streak. Over the last 22 games, these brothers show up. And when you talk about what they do defensively, here's why we can't ignore that. Come playoff basketball, I like you. Sometimes I don't like the system, especially at the beginning of the season. Boston, I totally agree with you. They was one of the worst teams to watch. Jason Tatum, it's your turn. Jaylen Brown, it's your turn. We'll squeeze Marcus Smart in every now and then. Now, Marcus Smart called them out. Then ultimately they had to have a team meeting. Then ultimately Tatum and Brown had to get together, and they had to be committed to playing together because you obviously need a tandem in the NBA if you're going to have any kind of really sustained success. But Udoka, what he has done, I can't say enough. This guy is a legitimate top 2 coach of the year candidate. When you look at what he has done, this team, look at them defensively. They're like a bunch of piranhas. They switch everywhere. You've got 5 guys. They get out on shooters better than anybody that I have seen. Now we come to Miami and Milwaukee to bring up your point. It ain't about Giannis, because Giannis going to do what he does in the inside and in the open court, although he's suspect from the perimeter. But we know Giannis is going to give you his numbers. Drew Holiday, Middleton, what they can give you, who's a team that could combat that because of their defensive prowess? That would be the Boston Celtics. When you look at Miami with Hero, with Butler, even with Bam, because he's really an undersized, big, very athletic, great in open court, stuff like that. But you got a Robert Williams, a guy like that there, who can make some noise for you. The pickup of White has really brought this team together as well and elevated their play defensively. And in the meantime, while all of that has transpired, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown has elevated their level of play. So I want to see it be more consistent. Please don't get me wrong, because you weren't that way at the beginning of the season. You're flowing now over the last 30-plus games. I get all of that. The playoffs are a different beast. But when it comes to the playoffs, you got to remember, the game slows down a little bit. You don't get as many open court opportunities. Defense are able to get back, set their defense right, and what have you. We know this about playoff basketball. And nobody wants Boston to do that. Because if Boston does that, that makes their defense even more formidable.
Okay.
And that's how I look at it.
All right. Monica, get in here.
All right, so I'm on Team JJ this morning. And Stephen A., here's what I would like to point out about this Celtics team. Because of the three of us, I had the privilege during this, or one of the games that disrupted the win streak, to be on the ground when Boston hosted the Dallas Mavericks. My wonderful radio partner, George Sedano, we had the radio call. It was delightful. As dynamic as the Celtics defense is, when we start talking about playoffs and we start talking about adjustments, yes, they switch out aggressively. However, ball movement still counts. And you're going to have a star on the other team. In this case, it was Luka Doncic, who was able to move the ball quick enough to find Dorian Finney-Smith, who went off for 19 points and hit 2 big threes down the stretch of that ball game to send the Boston Celtics home or leave them home with a loss. And so when I think about the Bucks or the Celtics, we have not given enough credit for a team that has been there, done that, and it don't mean a thing if it ain't got that ring. All of those things because of the Boston Celtics, or excuse me, because of the Milwaukee Bucks' ability to also defend and their experience in a series. I love what Boston is doing. They're 14-4 on the road since the turn of the new year. However, when we start talking about playoffs, they do not have the recent history that gives me confidence. And so I agree with JJ that the Bucks are still the team to beat. Yeah, they lost the other night without Giannis. That's a given. They're 8-2 in their last 2. The Celtics are 9-1 in their last 10, or in their last 10 rather. So to me, yes, we are thrilled with what we're seeing from the Celtics, and it has been a thing of beauty. But again, in a series where you're going to go head to head, to me, the defense will always be at a disadvantage to a degree when we're talking about some of the more prolific scorers leading their teams in the Eastern Conference because you have to react. That's just the nature of the game of basketball. And so, on both sides, I'm still going with the Bucks right now.
JJ, before you jump back in here, I just want to mention, so nobody's talked about the Sixers or the Brooklyn Nets in this conversation. Just to be clear, we've got Miami, Milwaukee, and Boston. On it.
Again, is it possible? Yes. But there's more question marks about those teams than there are the other three teams.
I just want to remind the audience that we're just talking about those three.
I brought up the Celtics half-court offense.
Yeah.
And you bring up their defense. And again, I give credit. They have a great defense. Best defense in the league. They're very disruptive. The thing with the Heat and the Bucks, they have the defenders. Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, Giannis, Jimmy Butler, PJ Tucker. They have the defenders to make life very tough on Tatum and Brown in the half court. But the big problem here is this. 9 games into the season, I came on this show, and you were talking about the fact that the Warriors were going to win the championship. Phoenix Suns window is closed. You get caught up in the moment. This is the reality. You get caught up in the moment.
Really?
So yes, right now, Kim K and Pete Davidson, they're dating. But you're the type of person who thinks they're going to date forever. Things are going to change.
Oh, no, I don't
Things
think
are going to change, and things can change
so
very quickly.
So wrong you are.
Things can change very quickly.
I don't believe that at all. But I'm not going to knock the brother for having a good time now. My point to you is this. At the end of the day, when you look at the situation in Boston, first of all, let's understand something. You start off at the beginning of the season. I haven't jumped off the Warriors bandwagon. The only thing that has happened to the Warriors is that they've gotten injured. That's it. If it wasn't for the injuries, I wouldn't be concerned one bit about the Warriors coming out of the West. And I truly, truly mean that from the bottom of my heart. Monica, to get back to your point, you actually made a weak argument because you had 2 better examples to use other than the loss to Dallas. How about losing to Indiana, which Boston did? How about losing to the Detroit Pistons, which Boston did? Now, obviously, it was the second of back-to-back games.
It's not weaker. I'm talking about playoff teams, but continue.
But they lost both of those games. That's all I'm trying to say. Those are the only 3 games they've lost pretty much in the last 22, 23 games. So we got all of that. Getting to you, JJ, I would tell you, ain't no prisoner of the moment. You watch what you see and what have you. I sat up there and I'm looking at Boston. I'm like, I didn't see this defense coming like this. I got to give credit where credit is due. I also didn't see Philadelphia and Daryl Morey just shredding their own bench. Yeah, they performed last night without Embiid and Harden, and that was nice to see. But them brothers got to show up come playoff times. It's immense pressure on Harden. We all know that. When I look at Miami, what do we say about Miami? Great culture, great team, great talent. Who closes for them? Definitively speaking, on a night-in, night-out basis, what's the answer to that question? I'm just saying the question marks combined with Boston's defense. And it's not like they got just one star. They got two of them. And it's not like Marcus Smart and others can't hit shots either. Hell, Pritchard, Pritchard, this guy's hitting shots for crying out loud. I'm just looking at Boston and I'm saying I can't ignore them. I can't ignore what I'm seeing.
Monica, is Stephen A. prisoner of the moment?
There's a great question.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. I think you are, Stephen A. You absolutely are. Listen,
you said the word macro earlier. That's the first time I've ever heard you say that word. That's the first time I've ever heard you talk about it from a macro sense.
Monica, go ahead.
Go ahead, Monica.
Okay, I will say the nature of this MVP race is we all are going to be prisoner of the moment because I agree with JJ. It's going down to the wire. But I want to go back to what you said, Molly, in terms of none of us mentioning the Brooklyn Nets or the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yeah.
I think the road ultimately leads to the Bucks, period. Like, whoever is going to come out of the East, I think is going to have to go through the Milwaukee Bucks. And Stephen A., that argument is not a weaker argument because Dallas, of the three teams you mentioned, Dallas is the only actual playoff team. So what are you talking about?
No, I was saying that other teams they lost to. I'm saying that it's perfectly respectable. I'm saying it was perfectly respectable to lose to a Dallas Mavericks team. The same Boston Celtics team that I was raving about lost to Indiana and Detroit. I'm saying those were worse losses than the Dallas loss. That was my point.
I agree with you. But we will not see Indiana or Detroit in the playoffs. And so in terms of translating, to me, what we saw with Dallas
and Boston ain't going to see Dallas because Dallas ain't going to the finals.
All right. Here's the good news.
We talk about playoff teams, baby. Come on.
All right.
All right.
So what's up with that? What's up with that?
You know what that is.
You wanted energy this morning.
You know what I'm saying? What's up with that?
Yeah, you want that big energy or what do you want?
I'm just saying, you see what I'm trying to say?
Okay.
This is what you do. This is what you do, Molly.
Okay. JJ, listen, Stephen A. doesn't agree with your take, but Kanye West does. I like that. Let's keep it rolling. These two will be back.
Actually, I don't think Kanye West agrees with his take, but I'm just saying.
Yes, he does. We don't have time for that. If you need me to moderate that debate, I can do that another time.
I didn't bring it up.
The quarterback carousel continues to sweep. There he is, touching down in Indy. He's an Indianapolis Colt. The Falcons trade Matt Ryan to the Colts. Meanwhile, Atlanta reaches a deal with Marcus Mariota. The Falcons got a 2022 third-round pick for Ryan. It will leave a dead money charge of over $40 million this season on the club's salary cap, the largest known charge for any player all time. Mel Kiper Jr. is here. You have a new mock draft that is out today. We will get to that in just a moment, sir. Hi, Mel. Good morning. It's good to see you. I need some good energy.
How's Stevie doing? Is he?
Wait, hold on. Mel, I'm glad you asked because Stevie is wild this morning. He's on one.
What's going on, Mel?
And he just came in with like a cup or a mug, and I'm nervous there's caffeine in it because he's already at an all-time high right now.
No. I don't drink coffee.
Yeah, you drink tea with milk and honey. Don't you think I know this by now?
Decaf tea with milk and honey. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Let's go.
Information. I wish I didn't know.
That's right. I like the blazer, by the way.
Thanks.
It's nice.
Finally, a compliment. Nice. Mel, tell me this. Would a Super Bowl in Indy make Matt Ryan a Hall of Famer?
It could, Molly. He should have won one already when they blew that lead against the Patriots. And he's been a model of consistency. Last 10 years, he's been 65% or better. Remarkable. I love Matt Ryan. And so I would go to bat for Matt Ryan, certainly winning a Super Bowl there. And they feel like their personnel is Super Bowl caliber. But they're in the AFC, and all these quarterbacks can't win a Super Bowl. Multiple Super Bowls. There's going to be a lot left out of the big dance there, the Super Bowl. So it's going to be fun to watch this AFC and these quarterbacks, these great quarterbacks, compete to try to get to the ultimate goal, which is winning a Super Bowl. But I would say Matt Ryan, get a Super Bowl win in Indy, something that Phillip Rivers couldn't do, Matt Carson Wentz couldn't do, for Chris Bauer, the GM, and then I would say he's a Hall of Famer.
Well, I mean, I'm not here to disagree with you, Mel Kiper Jr., the great Mel Kiper Jr. I'd never do that. But what I would say to you is that there's a couple of things that I expected you to bring up that you didn't. So I'm going to do it for you, Mel Kiper Jr. How about the fact that the man has 5 losing seasons? seasons on his resume. I think the number is 6, by the way. And by the way, it wasn't the last 10 years at 65% or better. It was the last 8. Okay? And by the way, he's had losing seasons the last 4 years. So what I would ask you, Mel Kiper Jr., because I'm just curious about it. I'm just curious. And by the way, I just got my computer in front of me. That's all it is. I damn sure didn't know it. I had to look it up. Yeah. The bottom line is this, Mel Kiper Jr. Do you feel that way about Eli Manning as well, who's got 2 Super Bowl championships, but outside of that was missing the playoffs every damn year? I mean, what are we to make of what qualifies you as a Hall of Fame quarterback, sir? I'm going to defer to your expertise.
Well, I got 10 years on my sheet for Matt Ryan, so that's good enough for me. I don't know what stats. I know MVP 1 year. Yeah, I got a high percentage for 10 years, so I'll just go with that. I think Eli winning the 2 Super Bowls, beating Bill Belichick and Tom Brady twice, okay? Doing what he did for Tom Coughlin as the head coach, beating the greatest head coach, greatest quarterback, puts Eli Manning in the Hall of Fame. That's a given, okay? Then you look at Matt Ryan. I said he has to win a Super Bowl. It's not the Hall of Very Good. Peter King has always said the Hall of Very Good or the Hall of Fame. Matt Ryan needs to win that Super Bowl. That's what I said, Stephen A. Right now, no, not sufficient, even though he's had a heck of a career, not sufficient unless with this Indy team, that the personnel, with the running game with Taylor, they got to fix that left tackle spot, get another receiver. There were some things that went wrong for Carson Wentz that he should be defended on, okay? That's why he could be pretty good in Washington. But for this football team, for Matt Ryan, get a Super Bowl win, then you're in the Hall of Fame.
Well, first of all, I'm convinced. I can't argue with Mel Kiper Jr. And then on top of it all, he's right, because I'm looking at my numbers again. I missed the last couple of years, 65 and 67%. So Mel Kiper Jr. was right. It was 10 years,
Shocking.
not 8.
Hey, can I piggyback on that too? How was Atlanta's defense for Matt Ryan all these years?
Well, listen,
so that's enough.
I just hold against the fact. The biggest thing I hold against Matt Ryan is the fact that you had a 28-3 lead and y'all kept throwing the damn football instead of milking the clock and running the football and trying to stop the bleeding that was clearly transpiring. You didn't do anything, and you had the cachet. You weren't some rookie or novice young quarterback that didn't have the cachet to tell Quinn or Kyle Shanahan, no, we're not doing that any longer. We need to chew off some of this clock because, damn it, that's Tom Brady on the other side.
And the greatest coach of all time in Bill Belichick, or Bill Belichick, as someone calls him. Hey, Mel, before we get into the Saints real quick, I think you did your last mock draft about a month ago before the Combine. Any major changes this time around?
Not major. I think when you look at the quarterbacks, that's the tough part, Molly and Stephen A. Where do you put the quarterbacks? And there are very few teams, Pittsburgh being the only one, that say we really have to draft a quarterback. And Malik Willis, will he be there? I was struggling with Carolina. I was struggling with Atlanta and Seattle. Is somebody going to overdraft? It happens every year at the quarterback position. And if you're going to do that, guys, you would do it for Malik Willis. He's kind of a right-handed version of Michael Vick. He's got that compact, strong, powerful frame. He's got the rocket arm. He's got incredible running ability. He's got incredible character. A phenomenal young man.
What about accuracy?
I think Malik Willis, if I'm one of those teams, that's the guy I would roll the dice for. I'd roll the dice on talent. He has the most talent of any quarterback in this draft.
2 questions. Number 1, what about his accuracy? How are you feeling about his accuracy, Mel?
I have no problem with his accuracy. I think he's the kind of guy, he tried to do a little too much in a couple games when I watched. He was playing against teams where he had to make a play. Throws 3 picks against Middle Tennessee State, 3 against Louisiana Monroe after being red hot the first 5 weeks. Team was struggling. He was trying to force things. Malik Willis will get better. I think he's the kind of guy that in another 2-3 years will be really hitting his stride, where initially is going to be a little bit of a transition period. But what we found, guys, is talent in the NFL with Justin Herbert, 3rd quarterback taken his year. Josh Allen, 3rd quarterback taken his year. Talent has won out big time, and Malik Willis has awesome ability.
Mel, as an aside, I got to ask, I couldn't wait to see you just to ask you this question I'm about to ask you. Deshaun Watson goes to Cleveland. I want to know, and now Matt Ryan is in Indy. I want to know which team you believed were the ideal landing spots for those 2 guys. I know where they are. Where would you have preferred to see Deshaun Watson? Where would you have preferred to see Matt Ryan, if any place else at all?
I love Matt Ryan going to Indy. Phillip Rivers had him in the playoffs. Carson Wentz almost had him in the playoffs. By the way, that defense gave up a touchdown on that first drive of the game to the Jacksonville Jaguars. In the game, they needed to lock down the young quarterback. But I think when you look at the AFC in general, it's like this conference is loaded, from Josh Allen to Patrick Mahomes to Justin Herbert. Now the list keeps going on and on and on. Like I said, it's going to be fun to watch, to try to predict which teams it's going to come together for. And Deshaun Watson may have a suspension. It's going to be with all new guys. We'll see how that all plays out. I had Cleveland in the Super Bowl last year. It didn't work out. Now Baker Mayfield's getting kicked to the curb after you almost had the Browns in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. This is a crazy league for quarterbacks. Patience at an all-time low. It's ridiculous how they're handling quarterbacks. I made a point yesterday on a podcast with Field Yates. The NFL is clueless when it comes to evaluating quarterbacks. That's been proven time and time again. It's not going to change. They are clueless in terms of how to evaluate quarterbacks. Not only once they're in the league, coming out of college, once they're in the NFL, they have no idea.
Wow, and that's a hot take right there, Mel. But I want to switch to the wide receiver position. How do you think the Packers should approach the draft to replace Devontae Adams?
Attack it hard, because this is the year. They haven't done it for Aaron ever, right? So if you go by what they've done, you say they're not going to take a receiver. They better, because this receiver core in this class is strong and it's deep. I said yesterday 2 to 3 minimum in this draft. I think you look at a Sky Moore from Western Michigan, the most underrated player in this draft. Heck of a player. I look at Steve Smith, went with the 3rd round when he came out. Great football player. The guy you want on your team. Sky Moore, stiff arm, great after the catch. Just a baller. Sky Moore can play for me any day of the week out of Western Michigan. You can probably get him in the 2nd round. There's going to be other receivers going the first ahead of him. I have Traylon Burks going to Green Bay. I have Kenyon Green, offensive lineman out of Texas A&M, going there to help Aaron Rodgers. He's a guard. He's nasty, and he can kick the tackle in a pinch and do an adequate job. I think if they get the O-lineman in Green and a receiver like Burks and augment that and with a guy like Sky Moore and some others, then all of a sudden I think Aaron Rodgers will be pretty happy.
All right.
I'll wrap it up by repeating what you said. The league is clueless when it comes to evaluating quarterbacks, and we have seen it time and time again. You know who is not, though? Mel Kiper Jr.
The man,
Mel,
the myth, the legend.
Yes, thank you for being with us, and can't wait to see you in person
Molly,
in Vegas.
Stephen,
Vegas. Come to the studio in Vegas, Mel. Don't big time us, Mel. Come to the studio,
no,
man.
Not just the big stage
Never,
draft night, the
never.
early mornings with us. Stephen A. will bring you a tea.
I will.
Decaf with milk and honey.
I'll go get it myself, Mel. I'll go get it myself.
No, now that's a lie.
swear.
That is a
I
lie.
swear.
Wait.
I swear.
Wait, Mel, I can prove it time and time again. That is a lie.
I would
Mel,
go
we'll talk
get
to
you
you
a
soon.
drink. I would do that.
That has never happened in 6 years.
You never
Oh,
asked.
it's a pleasure.
Yeah, because I
You
can get
never
myself my own drink.
I would
Oh
do
my
that
God.
for
Let's
her,
go.
Mel.
Let's
I
go.
would
Mel.
do
Good
that.
luck.
I am a total fan, and I'm only going to speak for myself here. He is even keel. I saw him against Michigan the other day elevate his level of emotion.
Yeah.
That, my brother, if you want to really, really shine on the next level, because he's got the skills, he's got the game, okay, and he just needs to be more assertive and a bit more. He's got to show a bit more fervor, and I think for Duke to win the national title, he's going to need to do that.
No question.
I think he's going to need to do that. So step your game up, but emotionally. He needs to go after it because the skill is there.
Yeah.
I love his game. And I know you love, what's his kid, Williams?
Mark Williams.
Mark Williams.
Yeah. He's going to be an elite defensive center at the next level.
Not a problem. I'm not denying that. But this kid, Van Kiro, has got a chance. But you got to elevate your level of fervor. You got to go after it and take it. He's at that point now. You got a national championship on the line. Y'all didn't win the ACC championship.
ACC regular season.
Well,
And that's why JJ was
I don't know that
disappointed.
there's a banner getting hung for that. I don't know how they do that anymore.
Yeah. You talked about disappointment in a couple games. Kyrie's also a little disappointed, gentlemen. That's where I want to go now. Kevin Durant dropped 37, and Brooklyn beat the Jazz last night at Barclays. Still no Kyrie when the team plays in New York, but no problem for the Nets, who have now won their last 6 to 7 games. The Nets right now are hanging on to that 8th spot with the Hornets on their heels. Yesterday at shoot-around, Durant talked about Kyrie still not being able to play due to the vaccine mandate.
He's frustrated at not being able to play, and you figured this stuff would be rolled back by now, and we'd be way past this. But it's a situation we're in. We got to deal with it. He's got to deal with it, and I'm trusting that it'll get figured out here soon. I have no clue what may happen, but I'm just trusting that things will work itself out. And but I'm sure he misses playing in front of the home crowd, and the home crowd and vice versa, they miss him. So hopefully we get it figured out soon.
All right, Monica, back here with us. We'll get to you in just a minute. Stephen A., do you think Kyrie should be frustrated?
Yeah, with himself. He's got to point the finger at him. Listen, one of the things that's made me incredibly uncomfortable about talking about this whole vaccine thing is that I prided myself in all my years of covering the NBA. There was a time when people would get into folks' personal stuff. I've never been about that. Your personal life is your business. I'm about what you do on the basketball court. There's a lot of things, as you can imagine, I've seen off the court. And I turn a blind eye and a deaf ear to it. It ain't none of my damn business. I don't roll like that. I want to talk about the game. In Kyrie's case, you have no choice but to expand a bit beyond it because it's directly affecting his availability to play the game. And what really irks my nerves, I'm old school, bro, and I'm never going to apologize. And Monica, I'm sorry, I'm old school from this perspective. Do you think for 1 second that Kyrie would have been able to get away with this if he was playing in the 80s and the 90s with some of those cats? It'd have been a problem. Why? Because they would have been like, yo, we had to take it if we want to play. What the hell you mean you ain't going to be ready? Because we can say it's about the vaccine, and from a literal perspective, sure, it's about the vaccine mandate from a literal perspective. But theoretically speaking, we're looking at it, we would look at it like, we did it. What you doing? Okay, damn it, I didn't want to, KD, I didn't want to take it. Or Harden or somebody, I didn't want to take it. Well, a host of players, and you know better than me. There's a host of players that didn't want any parts of the vaccine. That's why you had some people taking the Johnson & Johnson vaccine instead of Moderna or Pfizer, because it's only one shot. You see what I'm saying? And by the way, that only protects you to some degree, but not to the degree that Pfizer and Moderna protects you. This is what the medical professionals told me. Please don't hold me accountable. And by the way, just as an aside, folks, they said that if you took 2 shots of Pfizer, the booster should be Moderna. If you took 2 shots of Moderna, the booster should be Pfizer. They said that makes it, close to full proof that, you're inoculated to some degree. All I'm saying to you is this. All those things being taken into consideration, you would have had a problem because we all doing it, but you gonna say you ain't doing it. So you with us or you not. And what bothers me is I haven't heard one single player, including KD, remotely come close to uttering, no, you don't want to call your teammate out. You certainly don't want to entertain it in the public. You want to protect that. I got that. I totally got that. But damn, to go the opposite direction where you're so vehement against, as bogus as the mandate is at this point. The problem is you've been that way since the beginning of the season. And we see players going up to Kyrie, you're hugging them, you're loving on them, you get, you're like you're proud of them. Like you're proud of them. And I'm thinking, what about the chip? What about this championship we're supposed to be going for? What are we doing? Because the playoffs are about to approach. And if Kyrie ain't available and Brooklyn loses because he's not there, I'm just curious what are people going to say then? I know what I'm going to say. I'm going to say the same thing publicly that I've said privately. You cost them the chip. Live with that. It's your right. You're doing what you need to do for you. But for the team, for that chip, nah. You passed on that. And that's what I'm going to remember. If Brooklyn loses and that brother's on the sidelines instead on the, I'm not going to think about Mayor Adams. I'm not going to think about the bogus mandate because it is bogus. They should lift it and he should be allowed to play right now. He should not be allowed. He should not be denied to play. But in the end, I'm still going to look at him and go like this. You cost Brooklyn the championship because with Kyrie Irving, I believe they can win it. That's where I'm at, JJ. Monica, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't disagree, Stephen A. And I agree with you in trying to give folks room to be who they are. But in this situation, you can't help but think how simple the solution could be, right? I also think that when it was first announced that the Nets would allow Kyrie to be a part-time player, I think there's frustration to go around. I mean, Kyrie Irving on the floor is always better than Kyrie Irving not on the floor. However, perhaps it is even less of a tease and less frustrating if this door had never been opened in the first place by the Nets. And so there's a lot here. I agree with you at this point. The mandate is bogus. The solution seems to be simple. Because to your point now, even if it's just one, right? And so whatever the relationship between KD and Kyrie is that seems to be unique and maybe different from relationships that Kyrie has had with past teammates, I hope that is enough to help them take advantage of this window, because I do think that there's a window beyond just this year. And to your point about a teammate joking, former teammate James Harden did joke. At this point, I'm going to just give him the shot once upon a time in a press conference. And so we do know that it has caused some dissension behind the scenes. But to me, the solution seems to be simple, JJ.
No, I agree. The solution is simple. And whether you agree or not with the mandate is in place. Right. And it is in place to protect our community here in New York.
Right.
We're talking about millions of city and private employees. So there's no way that Kyrie should be granted an exception.
I agree.
So his frustration should not be that I can't get an exception. There is an argument to be made that he should be frustrated at some of the illogical byproducts of this mandate, i.e., he can attend games, but he can't play. Right. Maskless, by the way.
Right.
That unvaccinated visiting players
can play.
I agree with Stephen A. to the point, he had a decision. We all had to make that decision. 98% of his peers made the decision to get vaccinated. City employees all over New York City, private employees all over New York City, they made the decision to get vaccinated so that they could do their job.
Where I'm coming to, and I apologize if this in any way puts you on the spot, but as a former player, we both know there are numerous players in the NBA who did not want to take that shot. But they took it because I want to play ball. I'm trying to win a championship. And I want to collect this check too now. If he were your teammate, how would you feel if you took the shot and he didn't?
Wow, what a spot he's putting me on here.
No, you don't have to answer it because I understand. I mean, I'll answer it, but you don't have to.
I'll answer it this way.
Okay.
I've been in a bunch of different locker rooms, played 15 years.
Right.
I've always been direct with my teammates.
Okay.
And my teammates, whether it was in Orlando, Philly, LA, New Orleans, I've always been direct with my teammates. And I would be direct with Kyrie as his teammate. And I would feel frustrated that we didn't get a chance to potentially win a championship because he was unwilling to get vaccinated. I would be frustrated.
Right.
Yeah, I think anybody would be frustrated to some degree. I would respect his personal choice.
Right.
But choices have consequences.
Yeah, choices have consequences. And this is what I want to say right in front of you. Listen, again, I'm not about the personal, man. Your personal business, like, I get mad. Like, I remember one time I got, John Wall and I, we're pretty cool now, but we had a difference of opinion because he had found himself in a precarious situation. And I said something about it on the air. And what bothered me about it is that people were treating me like I revealed it when, in fact, it was TMZ. And all I said is you can't have TMZ, blah, 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 blah,
right.
because TMZ had publicized it. James Harden, somebody called me about that the other day because we were talking about James Harden after he get blown out by Brooklyn. He partying at the club. I had a problem with it, but I didn't reveal it. My point was TMZ revealed it. Why are you getting spotted by TMZ? I wouldn't have never said anything. I could have walked in the damn club and I would have walked on the air the next morning. I wouldn't have said a word. I'm not going to sit up there and say that Kevin Durant should call out Kyrie or any player should. I'm not trying to imply that. What I'm saying is at the end of the day, we're talking ball. We got a championship to pursue. Next season's not guaranteed. Listen to the language, Monica, JJ, coming out of their mouth. Well, this ain't the window. The window don't close. We don't win it this year. We got next year. I'm sorry. I thought we were living in a world where we recognize tomorrow ain't guaranteed. You could go out in the street. Something could happen to you tomorrow. Moments matter. And the fact that that gets shoved aside and the priority of the moment is diminished and disincentivized to some degree, rakes my damn nerves because when people are walking through the turnstiles to see Barkley, you sort of the explosion Kyrie Irving put on display. Y'all understand that the Barclays Center hasn't seen that this year, right? We've seen him in street clothes. Watching when they played Dallas, we saw him in street clothes, watching their game. I think it wasn't Dallas, it was somebody else. I forgot who they played. We saw him at the Duke game, but the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York, which Kyrie Irving convinced everybody to come play at, Kyrie Irving ain't available at all. You can't see him. And we want to point the finger. Listen, I'll place a call to Mayor Adams on Kyrie's behalf. It ain't even about Kyrie. I think the mandate is bogus. They need to lift it, period. Okay? I'll make that call. I don't think it'll matter because Eric Adams is the man. He's got bigger fish to fry. But the point is, we support Kyrie's position in terms of what the mandate stands for at this particular moment in time. It does not absolve him and what he has elected to do and how incredibly selfish that decision is. And the fact that NBA players walk around treating him like he is somehow victimized, to me, I'm lost because I don't understand how everybody can sit up there and go and ignore the fact, yo, bro, we trying to win a championship and you ain't playing when most of us are vaccinated.
I don't get the sense that people have treated him like he's been victimized. I don't get the sense that
I'm just saying,
from
if
NBA.
you,
I don't get the sense
if you watch the
friendly.
games, if you watch the games, I'm just talking about how they come up to him
people
after the game.
protested outside
But I
for
mean,
him.
they show him a
talking
lot
about
of
NBA
love and
players.
affection. They show him a lot of love and affection. And you see
That's because he's kind. That's because he's kind.
he is a nice guy. He's not a bad guy.
I think it's just friendly. I think it's just friendly.
Okay.
The one thing I will say, just to slightly make it every day, right? JJ, I loved your answer about as a former athlete, but I think I don't know, Stephen A. Even within our families, our friend groups, you got people you get on my nerves. You can't come because you're not vaccinated, but I still love you, right? Like I just think that this is played out publicly, and I have a hard time believing, to JJ's point, that behind the scenes, one of his teammates has not been like, yo, dog, like publicly, you're my guy, you're my teammate, but you bugging. And so I just think there's that locker room conversation and then what is portrayed publicly.
That's fair. But in the end, we all have to conclude, if the Brooklyn Nets don't win the championship this year, and Kyrie is not on the court when it happens, Kyrie Irving cost the Brooklyn Nets a championship. You can make that argument.
It's certainly a missed opportunity. All right, we got to roll. Still to come on First Take, the sequel was even better than the original in the career of Joe Burrow. So how about the trilogy? Why one offseason move may give Burrow an even better 2023. Marcus will be back, and it was a disastrous season for Urban Meyer as the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Shocking details in a new article by The Athletic. You don't want to miss what Stephen A. has to say about that next. Monica Lawrence ran through the route again after practice. Meyer walked up to the pair. Hey, Trevor, you got to slow down for him, Meyer said, according to sources. These boys from the South, their transcripts ain't right. Marcus Spears back here with us. And Marcus, this Brown incident, just one of many in the Athletic article, which also cited sources saying Meyer was unfamiliar with star players around the NFL, including Aaron Donald. I don't know if I call Aaron Donald a star, but he's like
who's number 99?
The star, right?
Who's number 99?
Unbelievable. Marcus, there's a lot to unpack here. Are you surprised by what this story revealed?
No, I'm not surprised. It's incompetence. And we saw Urban Meyer come into Jacksonville incompetent and not knowing what to do based on his hiring. Based on the history of some of the coaches that he's been around, based on the Zach Smith incident in Ohio State. Like this article, it's only more evidence to let people know Urban Meyer is who Urban Meyer is. And I think when we start seeing these things, and see, this is what Urban Meyer didn't realize and understand, is that when you get to this level, as far as the NFL, you're dealing with grown men. You're dealing with grown men also in the media that has a platform and a microphone every single day, like Stephen A., to go and digest and talk about every single move that you're making that is either crazy, that is out of order, or on the flip side, when you're doing a tremendous job. And he could not handle that part of it. Number one, we all know that, based on his responses to not getting on airplanes to go back home with his team because the pressure had become too much and he needed a break or a reprieve. But also when he hired, the things we heard from players in Jacksonville. And that's the big thing that everybody talks about when college coaches come out. You're dealing with grown men. And also, some of those grown men paycheck is more than yours on those rosters. They also have credibility throughout the league before you come on as a head coach. The difference in college is I run everything. I'm the head honcho. I can say what I want to say, do what I want to do. We in a market where we can hide things and some things will go under the radar. Urban Meyer didn't realize he was no longer at the University of Florida or he wasn't at Ohio State. He didn't realize he was in a grown man league. And when grown men don't respect you as a head coach in the NFL, that's a wrap for you. And that's why when this season was going along and the owner, Shad Khan, was talking about, well, we're going to take our time and really investigate this, it was already over. When you lose a locker room in the NFL, and Stephen A. knows this as well as anybody because I talk to him about it all the time. Once you lose the locker room as a player or a coach, it's over. There is nothing else you can do. We had this conversation about Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. We had this conversation about guys going into locker rooms, Baker Mayfield, thinking that this was the same as college and you can have the same approach. It is not. Once dude's mentality are foregone on you as a head coach, that's a wrap. But Urban Meyer, the person, is summed up in this article.
I disagree with you. And let me tell you why I disagree with you, Swagoo. You keep saying Urban Meyer didn't know. You're wrong. He knew. He just thought he was big enough to get away with it. There's a difference.
So naive.
He wasn't clueless. He wasn't oblivious. It was nothing like that. What he was a man that inherited a Jacksonville Jaguars franchise that had only been to the postseason one time since 2007. That was in 2017 when they went to the AFC Championship game. What happened? And let me tell you, let me show you the elevated level of stupidity that comes with Urban Meyer. What happened in the regime that preceded Urban Meyer? There was an individual there by the name of Tom Coughlin. Who was a two-time Super Bowl champion who alienated his roster. Jalen Ramsey wanted out of there. Calais Campbell and others, they all fought. You got cats that wanted the hell up out of there because of how this man was. And we came to find out Jalen Ramsey was telling the truth with a lot of things he was saying about the culture that existed in Jacksonville because of Tom Coughlin. Urban Meyer knew about that. Now, I know Doug Maroney came after and all of this other stuff, but you know, he was there under Coughlin. He stayed a little while longer. But the point is, it was the Coughlin era. Yeah. It was the Coughlin era, okay? Urban Meyer knew that. So there's no way he didn't know. There's no way that he was oblivious. He thought he was above it. When we talk about people in positions of power, what are one of the main things we lament? Entitlement. How you feel you above the fray, fully knowledgeable about things that are applicable to everybody else, but you're going to be different. You're going to be different because see, you the Urban Meyer that was 65-15 at Florida. And then you went 83-9 at Ohio State. And over the course of your career, you won 3 national titles, okay? And you went in the Final Four to the college football playoffs. And you did all of these things. So he comes to the pro level, and Shad Khan gives him all the power. You know, he gave him the same power he had at a college program. And that's what happened. He had the power. Go ahead.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you to some level. Do you think he was oblivious to the accountability?
Yes. You're right about that.
Okay.
But not from the players. Not from the players. See, because he was placed. This is why what Urban Meyer has done is now ruin it for any superstar college football coach hoping to be on the NFL level. So you can stay in college.
That's a good point.
But you ain't nobody.
If he's never been,
If you have never been on a pro level and you are an elite college football coach hoping to land an NFL job, it's over. Urban Meyer has ruined it for your entire culture. Okay, it's on. It's done. You'll never get that because this man thought that he could get away with it. Now, here's the real question, and it's a facetious one. It's a rhetorical one. If Urban Meyer thought he could get away with this stuff on the NFL level, what was he doing to the
what
college
happened in
football
college?
players? What was he doing to those players? Where he really did have that power. Urban, do y'all understand? Do you understand, Marcus, that everything that Urban Meyer was accused of, do you understand that there's no way he would lose his job in college football? If those things came to light, he'd still keep his job in college football.
That's why I asked you that question. Was he oblivious to the accountability?
Right.
Because to your point, you said something that struck a chord with me. When you are operating without accountability, that becomes your norm.
That's right.
That becomes the things that you think you can do. So his warped idea of how to coach or how to be a coach carried over into the NFL, and he did not realize the consequences or the accountability that comes along with that. That's why I brought guys like you up who have a microphone every day that millions and millions upon people are going to listen to. And when you divulge information, it's going to be approached as gospel.
Yeah.
And when Urban Meyer was in that position in Jacksonville and he thought he could operate like he's been to your point, he's been operating like this didn't happen when he got to Jacksonville, where he thought he had this level of aptitude and ownership and responsibility over a franchise where he could do things without having anybody call him out. So I believe, honestly, in the depths of my soul, that Urban Meyer was oblivious to the type of accountability and the type of heat you would receive by the way he was acting.
Based on that explanation, I get you. I got you. I got you.
Yeah, but one other thing I just want to add. So he would always threaten to cut or fire people, but then he'd take it a step further and tell them that they couldn't even get a job making $15 an hour if they didn't play football. That's really motivating.
How about kicking his kicker?
Oh, you're right.
Thought about that one.
Yes, that's a whole different animal.
Yes.
All right, we'll leave it
there. That's why
so
he was in them boxing
classes.
classes.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. MJ, AI, Russell Westbrook.